This is the Retirement Solution Podcast with financial advisor John Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital.
Thanks for being here with us on the Retirement Solution alongside financial advisor John Hicks. I'm Heather Branch, here to ask John about the things you can be working on to get ready for what's hopefully going to be a long, healthy, happy retirement. For many of us, it's going to be 2, 3, sometimes 4 decades. Some people are in retirement longer than they are in their working years.
I mean, if you think about that, you know, when FDR put in place, you know, the New Deal, right?
Yeah.
So when it created kind of a Social Security system, the average age that it was going to start was 65 years old. Now, FDR didn't even live that long. That was actually the age of death back then, 65. And so it was essentially an insurance policy. If you lived too long, that's when it would kick in. So think about that. That was not that long ago. That was 1935. 1935, and here we are a little less than 100 years later. 65, man, if someone passes away at 65, you're just like, oh my gosh,
so
they were
young.
so young.
What happened? That's exactly right.
And it's funny now because things have evolved, longevity, the way that we're looking at, you know, we were just talking, you know, at the break, you know, talking about how not only are we living longer, there's so many advanced medical treatments where we can not only live longer, but like live better, you know, be more active, be more mobile, things that can get rid of your inflammation, things that make us lose weight a little bit easier, things that can make us, you know, get rid of having to take so much blood pressure medication, all these things, they're doable. And the craziest thing is that now the average life expectancy 86 as opposed to 65. You know, there's a great chance that if we retire at 62, 65, we're going to live to be 90. One of two people, if you're a couple, one of you two, there's like a 60% chance one of you will live to be 92 years old. So when you think about that, man, that means you could be retired for nearly 40 years.
Which should be good news. But for a lot of people, they're like, oh no.
I know. Did I save enough? Do I have enough? How are we going to do this? How am I going to get up and down these stairs? What if I don't want to sell my house? What happens if something happens to my spouse? What happens about the kids? Who's going to watch the cats?
And in the meantime,
all these things.
Pensions have gone away almost as a dinosaur. Social Security, I guess it will become insolvent if they do nothing by the year 2035. Somebody's going to do something, but everybody is just avoiding it like the plague because politicians, they do think it will be career suicide to adjust it. So here we are as responsible men and women of America trying to figure it out ourselves, John.
And you know, and a lot of it is very easily solvable. And it's not even that complicated. But there are a lot of pieces and there are certain ways you want to attack the problem, right? So we talk about on the show all the time, there are essentially 5 pillars that we have to understand. How much protection do we need with our money? How much income can we create? How do we avoid as much taxes as we physically can? We're going to pay something, but how can we reduce that? How can we make sure we're set up for wealth transfer? So if something happens to one of the 2 people, that surviving spouse still has enough to do what they need to do. And then how do we plan for healthcare? So when you look at all those 5 pieces, we kind of have to have every one of those, not just thought through, but they have to also work well with the other puzzle pieces. You know, you can't have some janky thing like, you know, some 4-year-old trying to cram one puzzle piece on top of another. You need it to fit kind of seamlessly where it kind of looks like a Picasso. It's not in a positive way. So, you know, if it all works together, then we can be fairly comfortable that even if we do last old as Methuselah, that we can actually, you know, have money and dignity to do the things we want to do, right?
And so with all of that in mind, and because things have changed so quickly, I mean, it was in the 70s, it was our parents and grandparents that had pensions and Social Security and less longevity, which isn't such a great thing, but they just had, it felt like they had more security. Maybe they had it more available to them. We now have to navigate through the jungle of all the rules to help uncover the opportunities, the options that we have. That's what you and your team at J. Hagan Capital work to show us every single day. So one that we always default to, everybody knows about the market and you want to invest and grow your money in your working years and those kinds of things. And you get to retirement, should you reduce your risk, but you still need the growth to keep up with inflation, on and on. The wheel continues to spin. So let's talk about the market because, I mean, recently we've seen some pretty incredible ups, but also some downs for over a month. So Emily Rowland of John Hancock was on CNBC and compared Wall Street to a teenager. Here's what she said.
It feels like a little bit of a phase, like a moody teenager would go through. They're kind of erratic. They can be unpredictable. They can be strange, but you know that they end at some point.
Is that how teenagers are? I mean, I only have one in my house right now. And that's exactly what I feel like they are. It was funny. I mean, My kids are great. I remember there's almost nothing bad to say, but there have been a couple times here recently, and we have to say, hey,
everybody has to
that phone comes over to me now.
The phone.
I have to take the phone away.
That is the ultimate threat.
You would have assumed that I said you're not allowed to breathe at all for 15 straight minutes. It's like, Dad, that will end up killing me. So the same thing. It's just like, what? My phone? What? Oh, and I'm like, well. And the craziest thing is, and guys, I mean this. I mean it. And I remember when my parents said, hey, this is harder on me than it is on you.
Yeah.
I just thought, you are crazy.
Yeah.
Who's dumb enough to believe that crap?
Right.
And now I look at it, and I'm just like, it is 10 times harder for me.
Right.
10 times harder for me to give me that phone. That's my phone, you little heathen. And then like an hour later, I'm like, man.
Did I overreact?
Right.
Did I take it too far?
Did I understand the situation?
Right.
What am I really aggravated about? All this stuff. It's psychology babble in my head. But the craziest thing is, and I mean this, 2 hours without a phone, my daughter turns into an awesome human being again.
I know.
And maybe it's remorse. I doubt it. I just think that she doesn't have some other bad role model or some other bad image that she thinks she can get away with, whether it's talking back or not doing something or some influencer that lives in a 400,000 square foot mansion and they rent. They don't own any of that stuff, but she perceives that to be accurate and true. I'm like, come on, man. That's just all fake stuff.
The tech effect on all of us. Gosh. We could have, that's a whole nother radio show, podcast, conversation. We could dedicate hours to that. But the idea, I loved this comparison of the erratic market to a teenager. Because here's the thing, John, can't take the cell phone away from the stock market.
No, and it's really interesting because I did a little bit of research on this because after I saw you and I talked about this. So there are actual real reasons that the market's acting all weird. Now, that does not mean it will go up. That does not mean it will go down. It doesn't mean anything. It's just that when you understand a few things, it kind of puts things into perspective. So the S&P 500, and everyone knows what the S&P 500 is. It's the 500 largest American companies. That's it.
Yep.
The 500 largest companies comprise the S&P 500. And if you look at 2023, where the market was up a little over 20-something%, seven companies created 88% of those gains last year. Okay? So 7 companies contributed nearly 88% of all of the gains of the entire S&P 500.
Right.
And someone says, well, hold on, John, what does that mean? It means that 493 other companies sucked or weren't very good at all. They were barely positive, or they weren't positive at all. They were negative.
Right.
They call this breadth. How wide is the group of people moving forward, right? Because if you have 3 buffaloes charging at you, that's not a stampede. Doesn't matter how fast they're moving, there's 3. If you have 700 buffaloes running directly at you, that's a very different feeling, right? So in this situation, there were 7 buffaloes out of 500. The rest of them were languishing or just laying around in the pasture, eating food, doing whatever. But that was last year. This year, it's even worse. This year, 5 companies have created 92% of the returns of the S&P 500. Now, what am I trying to say here? Is everything falling apart? No, because if you own the S&P 500, you're doing a lot better than most people that just owned individual stocks.
Right.
Because there's only last year 7, this year 5. The rest of them, they could be down. So a lot of people are looking at their portfolios going, man, S&P's up 15% or whatever it is, as of this week. And I'm only up 2. Well, because frankly, there's only 5 companies that did exceedingly well. The rest of them didn't do all that great, right? Yeah. So what I've said about this is this kind of a sign of market health, right? So same way we're making this, this reference or this correlation between teenagers. I don't know if many of you guys have been out around teenagers here recently. There are 3 things, especially with a 14-year-old little girl, which is what I have. 3 things will destroy any moment in time.
Okay.
Number 1, hangry. Hungry to the point of being angry.
Hangry.
She would set my house on fire if she's hangry enough. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, she stays up on the phone or does whatever, talking to her buddies, or just ends up getting involved watching a Twilight movie or whatever until 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And she doesn't get enough sleep, but she has to be up, for PE class in the summer. So if she doesn't get enough sleep, it's almost like hangry. She'll burn the whole house down. She didn't really care. And number 3 is if something has happened socially to her little core group of friends, right? Doesn't matter if it's a positive or negative thing, but if there's an emotional change, those 3 things, who knows what's going to happen. So What we're seeing with the markets right now is a little bit of the volatility of, man, there are only a handful of things going really, really well. The rest of them, they're not terrible, but they're not good. So any given day, one or two pieces of bad information have a really good chance of affecting the market because there's only 5 or 6 or 7 good players right now in the broad group of things, right? So, I mean, more recently, and this just happened last week, Saudi Arabia has decided that they're no longer going to utilize the United States dollar as a medium of exchange for oil. Ooh, remember, I've said this for the past decade on the show. That's one of the things that could really, really potentially lead to some problems in a macroeconomic environment. And when you look at only 5 to 7 companies are ones leading the upside of the market, is this a potential time to maybe pump the brakes on how much risk we have in our portfolios? That you're going to have to do the math on that, right? Okay. Or you need to call our team and have them help you figure out, hey, how much risk should you take here? Because again, guys, when you're looking at interest rates, the Fed has not dropped rates yet, but they've alluded to the fact that they're probably going to consider doing that by year end. Now, we don't know if they're going to do that or not, but that means we're probably not going to see any more rate increases from here.
Okay.
We could see reductions, but they may stay the same. But if you can lock in and get 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9% on some safe stuff, some of it fully insured against loss. Yeah, you can get fully insured stuff, fully insured against loss that, yes, will pay 8 or 9 or maybe even 10% right now. Is that worth considering if there's only 5 to 7 companies leading the entire S&P? Maybe, right? So that's one of the things you want to consider. So just like teenagers can be erratic, teenagers can go off the deep end fast, whether it's factual or not factual or really based on substantial things or not based on substantial things. We don't want our life savings doing something equally as disastrous, especially in an election year, right?
Right.
A crazy election year where I'm just ready for the crazy to pop out of every corner from both sides. With all this mudslinging, I know that there was a whole bunch of money spent on defamation campaigns on both sides that are all about to come out. I'm not anxious to see any of that stuff. It's not going to change my idea about what I'm going to do. It's just going to be unfortunate, right? And so hopefully the market isn't the thing that gets crashed in that situation. But having said that, as someone that lives with a teenager, it ain't fun sometimes. So just make sure that you understand of those 5 pillars, the very first one is protection. Make sure you know how much of what you saved is protected so you can live to fight another day. And maybe even give that phone back to that teenager. Maybe.
In the meantime, work to get the teenager out of your retirement savings plan. If nothing else, helping you not only understand your risk, but adjust it to what your risk tolerance actually is. That is the point and purpose of meeting with John and his team at J. Hagan Capital, running the numbers on your savings, getting to work, understanding where you currently stand and adjusting to help you meet and reach your goals in your retirement years. Find us anytime, retirementsolutionradio.com. We also have links posted in the show notes, so you can just click there, or again, it's retirementsolutionradio.com.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solution Podcast with John Hicks. Begin the conversation about your savings plan with John and the team at J. Hagan Capital by visiting retirementsolutionradio.com. Be sure to listen to John's radio show, The Retirement Solution, Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Sundays at 9 a.m. on News Radio 840 WHAS.
J. Hagan Capital Inc. is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if J. Hagan Capital Inc. is licensed in your state, please call 502-690-5635. J. Hagan Capital Inc. is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. It does not provide legal or tax advice. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through J. Hagan Capital. National license number 1882794.